Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Gossip Finance, where I am your host, Elacius
And
Inger.
I'm Duncan Sandlin. How's everybody today? How are you, Lacey?
I'm absolutely fabulous. How are you doing?
I'm good, good, good. We got a lot of fun stuff today. For the news today, we're going to cover Elon Musk and his $55 billion Tesla payout package, which isn't going to happen. Uh, Lauren Boebert, the Boebert Duke, is having some trouble in her District 4 race. Alina Habba, even after Trump got tagged with the $83 million settlement deal for the punitive damages and the compensatory damages, she threatened the judge, and that didn't go well for her. I know. And then it looks
I
like,
mean, you kind of don't expect that to go well, right?
well, I think she's just getting pressured by Trump, but we'll get into that. Trump is in really deep financial trouble. It looks like he might be broke after this settlement agreement. And then Nikki Haley getting that sweet $1 million, $1 billion donor money is now laying into Trump because she wants to line her coffers. She's getting it all. She's going to get all that money. She's an evil witch, but she's getting it all. And then we have some fun clips. We'll cover the Taylor Swift conspiracy theory and some other stuff at the end. So it should be a fun show today.
I, you know what? I can't wait. I mean, the news has been super weird for so long, but we are going into all this election stuff, so
Yeah, it's
I
gonna
feel like
get.
it's going to get stranger before it gets less strange.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be a fun year for the show. This is gonna be a fun year for all the shows. Anyway, so we got to start with, because it's a finance show. We got to start with Elon Musk and his CEO benefits package. He arranged to get a 55 or 56 billion dollar benefits package, which is suspicious because it's a 12 billion more than he paid for Twitter, which is now really in the toilet. But this went to court because I think they're incorporated in Delaware. This went to court in Delaware, and this is what happened. The judge ruled on it just recently. He got sued by one of his shareholders who thought that was too much money for him to get paid as a CEO, which would be a record.
A judge has voided Elon Musk's $55 billion Tesla pay package. We want to go now to Bloomberg Technology co-host Ed Ludlow in San Francisco. Ed, what else can you tell us?
Well, in the first instance, Tesla shares are down significantly in the aftermarket, more than 2%. What shareholders alleged in their suit is that Tesla's board and its directors did not act with impartiality when setting the $55 billion compensation, which is a historic record for any compensation package for a publicly traded CEO. Yeah. And the judge in this case, Kathleen St. Jude McCormick, is agreeing with that in the sense that investors had to go hunting to clarify whether or not there were conflicts of interest in the apportioning of that reward. And as you can see, the market paying attention when Musk took the stand to basically defend his position in that compensation. He said, well, I had nothing to do with it. I don't set my own pay. So how could there be any leverage that the board would put over me or me over the board, which is what the conflict of interest in question, the concern was about.
So here's what's funny about that is he did that whole song and dance about, I don't set the pay. That's not up to me, right? Well, what they found in court was the board members that voted for it were people that he was really close to and he has a lot of control over financially. And those board members basically said, no, Elon called us and told us that this is what he wanted. And so they couldn't get out of it.
But there seems like there's a lot of that going around now. I mean, it's the reason the ultra-rich Republicans want Nikki Haley, yep, for the next president. It's how the Supreme Court is sort of being puppeteered largely.
Right. Getting lots of kickbacks.
Yeah. I guess we could just keep going with the list here.
So anyway, one of the shareholders said, "Hey, 55 billion. That's a lot for a CEO. That's unheard of. Most CEOs, are making 30-something million, which is a lot of money, which is way too much. But
that's already an insane amount of money.
But 55 billion. But yeah, but the suspicious thing is he's lost like half his fortune because of the crap with Twitter and blowing money on other projects that were just stupid. So he's really tanked his fortune. So it's kind of odd that he's asking for, well, he claims he didn't ask, but they would say, no, he kind of pushed us to give him this. That's just enough to get him back to where he was, or close to where he was. So it's kind of it was really suspicious going in. And then when they asked to justify why 55 billion, where are you getting that figure from? Nobody could tell you where they were getting that figure from. So it was pretty clear that the figure was from what Elon felt he needed to maintain his status.
Right.
So anyway, just show you this because they were mentioning this. If you're in Tesla, now might be the time not to be in Tesla, because this is just the one day, but this is the overall chart. And I've had this argument before with people where they're like, hey, what do you think of Tesla stock? And I'm like, I don't like it because it's so tied to Elon Musk. So if you look, if you invested in Tesla a long time.
I have historically not been excited about Tesla either.
Yeah, but it was good though under Obama because they were getting all that money from the government, and it went really well when Biden won, because it looked like we were going to go to electric vehicles more and more, and Tesla kind of had the game. But Elon Musk has screwed up so much, because here at the peak, when it starts to go down and down and down and down and down, and now it's down way down here. So if you've invested in Tesla the last 4 or 5 years, or 4 years, you've lost money, right? Because it has not gone up. It's gone back down. And part of this is because Elon buying Twitter and doing all this stupid shit, and then all his anti-Semitic crap. I mean, the problem is they're tied to the CEO. What they really need to do is get rid of him and put somebody else in charge. Are you listening, shareholders? Right. Can you hear me? Time to get an actual CEO. I don't care if you pay him $20 million a year, but that should be about all you should be paying him. 55 billion is fucking unheard of, man. I mean, what is he bringing to the table for 55 billion? He says a lot of anti-Semitic shit on Twitter.
But you know what? He's such like a weirdo wild card, like he's kind of like Trump. Right. In that respect, like you kind of don't know what just wild thing he's going to be like saying or typing or whatever.
Or doing,
He's a loose cannon.
So this was the...
So it could be anything. And you don't want the reputation of your whole company tied to somebody who's a loose cannon, just like you shouldn't have the reputation of your whole country tied to a loose cannon. Just kind of throw it out there.
Well, right. Well, I mean, but you don't want your entire reputation of your company tied to one person. I mean, that's the problem. It's the whole reason like monarchy systems were such a shit show. And the whole time we had monarchies for thousands of years, it was civil war after civil war, because everything's tied to one guy or one woman who's running everything.
Right.
I wouldn't tie my entire company to my image, because what if I do something stupid, or I get in trouble, or, I get married and she cheats on me with my best friend or something, and it's a big shit show and everybody's questioning about, my ability. Because you never know what's going to happen in life. So you never want to tie it to just one guy. That's what it would... There's just too high of a risk.
You do something stupid, Duncan?
No, I would never do something stupid.
Hard to imagine.
Not anymore. I'm older now. I'm more risk averse.
You're older and you have... I was going to say you have less energy for stupidity. Stupidity, it takes a lot of energy sometimes.
It's a young man's game, really.
It is.
So it was the judge's final kind of position. Was she wrote in the final, or she said in the final analysis, Musk launched a self-driving process for calibrating the speed and direction along the way as he saw fit. So he was in charge of everything. The process arrived at an unfair price, and through this litigation, the plaintiff requests a recall. So essentially, Musk had extensive ties with the persons tasked with negotiating on Tesla's behalf. So basically, his buddies that he has some control and manipulation over were the ones who came up with this magic number. Right? So it's bullshit. So anyway, his magic golden parachute gone. He's going to have to try to appeal, and he's not going to win an appeal. So, bummer for Musk. He's having a bad day. But speaking of bad days, we got to go back to our favorite person, who we might lose now, and I'm a little sad because she gets a lot of views for us, a lot for us anyway, a lot of views for us. But Lauren Boebert, our favorite, the Boebert.
Well, I gotta say, it's interesting to me that our viewers have jumped off of the look how weird Marjorie Taylor Greene is onto look how weird Boebert. I always want to call her Gogurt. How weird Gogurt is.
Well, the thing about Lauren Boebert is, I don't think she's ever submitted or gotten a bill on the floor, and the whole time she's been in the almost 4 years she's been there, she hasn't really done anything legislatively. I mean, all the news around her is how crazy her personality and her life is, because she's basically a reality TV show at this point.
Well, she just needs to watch that. What is that Schoolhouse Rock thing about how a bill becomes a law? She just needs to watch that a few times so she makes sure she knows the process. I'm sure she's just, feeling a little skittish.
Yeah. I'm just a bill sitting on Capitol Hill. Anyway, so she went to...
I did that just to get you to sing.
Yeah, I could sing it better. But anyway, so she was in the 3rd District in Colorado. Adam Frisch, she barely beat. She beat him by like 400 or 500 votes the last time in 2022, was it? Yeah. And she's up for re-election again. But Adam Frisch has gotten a ton of money. And she looks like she's losing. And I'm sure she got some pressure from the Republicans to back out. But she would then move to the 4th District in Colorado. This is also called carpetbagging. You move to a district where you think you have a better shot of winning, even though you don't really live there.
You pack up your little carpet bag, and you just tote yourself over to the next county.
Right, to a friendlier place. So she did a debate with the other...
These shark-infested waters. We got to go to friendlier waters.
Yeah. But the 4th District is more rural. It's a lot more spread out. But they did a debate with the 9 Republicans who are primarying, and she's one of them. And the debate was a total shit show, and we're going to watch a little bit of it because it is really funny. So this was the debate for the Colorado 4th District House of Representatives.
Could you give the definition of carpetbagger to me?
So one of the primaries asked Lauren Boebert, "Can you define carpetbagger for me?"
I heard
that. I didn't know that.
So yes, I have moved into the 4th District. My boys and I needed a fresh start. That's been very public of what a home life looked like. And I'm sorry to bring that up. I've tried to put it into a very pretty package and bring my ex-husband lots of honor.
Hey everyone, I'm Gabe Sanchez.
So this is Gabe Sanchez.
I did not hit Jason.
Yeah, I did not hit Jason. She's still under investigation for domestic assault of her ex-husband, right? So that's a whole thing that's going on. Plus, they're going to be playing, because they were talking to people in the 4th District, and they were asking them about, hey, did you hear about the Beetlejuice incident, where she was groping the guy and he was groping her at the Beetlejuice musical, which we always have to reiterate was a matinee. So it was mostly children.
And matinees are where people bring their kids more often. Not to say they don't go to evening shows, but you see lots of whole families in those audience.
So she was vaping, and they finally had to kick her out because they were vaping and making out and groping each other. So they're going to show all that, right? They're going to be running ads against her primary opponents. So this whole thing went really bad.
Can we just pause and then we can go back to how really bad it is? I'm just having a thought here. Can I make an appeal to America here? America, please, even those of you who hate us, and I know you're there watching.
Yeah.
And you like my pretty long hair, right? Anyway, please, let's stop electing people based on reality TV personalities, because that's basically what this woman is.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we might as well just go back and watch some old reruns of Flavor of Love or Rock of Love, and they can have the winner that they pick, and then their runner-up will just like throw in Congress.
Yeah, we just do Love Is Blind, and only we'll do it for pick your representative.
Oh, no.
So anyway,
okay,
they did this debate.
I derailed us.
Oh, no, it's fine. So they did the debate. The whole thing was a nightmare. It was bad for all of them, but there were a couple that did really well. But she came in 5th in the straw poll out of 9. And furthermore, right now the polling is not looking good for her in District 4. So she probably isn't going to make it through the primary, which is really kind of a bummer for her, because you got to spend 5 years minimum in Congress to get the pension, which is, I think, what she really wants here. And she's only going to have 4 if she doesn't win. So we'll watch a little bit more of the debate, because it was just embarrassing for the Republicans.
Boebert faced several of her GOP opponents in the first primary debate for Colorado's 4th congressional
Gabe
district.
Sanchez
And
reporting.
I'm here to earn your support, earn your vote. This is not a coronation.
Looks like Boebert learned a new word, coronation. But what do we expect? This is Lauren Boebert we're talking about here. She barely passed the GED after 3 tries, and she's been trying to defund the Department of Education ever since she first got into Congress.
Yeah, it's true. So basically, she had to go in there hat in hand begging, which was really sad, right? Then it got, let's see, we'll watch a little bit more of this, because it got really crazy.
Stolen from Donald Trump.
There was election interference for sure.
Hey, folks.
So that was them saying basically they didn't think Donald Trump did anything wrong. And then the whole thing got crazy. They got to a point where they asked the 9 panelists, how many of you have been arrested? And 6 of them raised their hands. And then they were like high-fiving each other like that was an accomplishment. I'm like, Jesus. If it were me, I'd like, I wouldn't even answer the question. I'd have just let it go. But yeah,
Oh my God.
She's sucking it up in the straw poll. She's in deep shit. I don't know. We might lose her, which really is going to suck for us.
Yeah, well, she's great for our ratings, but maybe not so great for America. So,
Oh man,
we could take one on our ratings.
We'll take it. I mean, I would rather her be gone than have the extra content.
If it's good for America, we'll take it. Some other clown will show up that we can talk about.
Yeah, every rose has its thorn, man. So
we're back to the Rock of Love reference.
There we go. Woo. Anyways, so we'll move on here. So Lauren Boebert having problems, but now we got to move on to Trump, who had just a terrible, terrible couple weeks. He did the E. Jean Carroll trial. He got tagged for $83.3 million in penalties, right, that he owes her. So here's the deal with that. He's going to try and appeal it, but in order to appeal it, you have to put up a bond for the $83.3 million. He can't just skate on it, right? So he's got to put up a bond with the court. So typically the way that works is you'll find somebody to basically co-sign for the bond or sign for the bond, like a bond agency or a bank or something like that. Like, I'm sure you've seen like bail bonds and stuff before. I've heard of that. That's what they do is like, let's say I have a $10,000 bond that says, I'm out on bond or on bail, right? So I can't pay the $10,000. So usually what it is I'll pay $1,000 on the bond. But what I'll do is I don't have the $1,000. I'll go to the bail bond company. They'll pay the $1,000. They'll loan it to me at like some high interest, like 20%, right? But then what happens is if I don't show up to court, the full bond is due. The bail bondsman is now on the hook for the full 10 grand of the other 9. So that's where they get like the bounty hunter thing. So bail bondsmen hire bounty hunters. So when you sign for the bond, they get your address, your phone number, your friends, your family, everything. So they know how to go find you and drag you back to court. That's what bounty hunters do. That's all they do. They just drag people back to court.
that is a good job for so many people. You know what? So many people I think would just have fun just like dragging idiots back to court and being like, listen.
I think it's a bad system, but we could get into that's a whole nother situation. But that's what's going on. But the problem is Trump.
I don't know anything about that system, but I can just see some satisfaction for some people being like, listen, guy, you're going to court.
Right. But Trump's kind of in a problem with that. So here's what happens. So we'll get into more Trump here in a minute. But Alina Habba, his lawyer, right, after the $83 million verdict came down from the jury, she, in a desperate attempt for an appeal, because she screwed that case up so bad, she couldn't present evidence. She blamed the victim, said the victim should be grateful she got raped because now she's famous. Shit like, I mean, it was just it was bad. She fucked that whole thing up. So, and that she's probably part of the reason he got that big of a judgment is because she was such a nightmare, and he was a nightmare too. But she, in a last-ditch attempt to try and appeal this, did this maneuver where she sent a letter to the judge after the case has been settled, after it's been closed. She sent this letter to the judge. This is Michael Popak. We're going to use him a few times because we got to cover this. But, man, this is really dirty.
Michael Popak, Legal AF. If I were Judge Lewis Kaplan, federal judge, Southern District of New York, I would report Alina Habba to the bar for an ethics investigation based on the new arguments that she just raised to distract from her poor lawyering that led to an $83 million verdict against Donald Trump based on the rape, defamation, and for punitive damages by a Manhattan jury. Now, Alina Habba argues for the first time in 3 years that back 30 years ago, for an 18-month period, Judge Lewis Kaplan was in the same law firm as Roberta Kaplan, no relation, the plaintiff's lawyer. And that 18-month or so overlap when Roberta Kaplan was a young associate and Lewis Kaplan was a partner is somehow unethical that he presided over the case. I mean, I don't even know where to start, but I'm...
All right, so this is why he's so shocked about this. So she sends a letter to the judge, and he'll read some of the letter in a minute here. She sends a letter to the judge saying, hey, 30 years ago, you worked with Roberta Kaplan, who was the attorney for E. Jean Carroll, right? Therefore, and she claimed that he mentored her or something, but he didn't. They were in the same office for 18 months. Then he got appointed to be a federal judge by Congress. But the firm they were at has over 1,000 lawyers and did back then. So he never met her. They were in completely different parts of the building, right? It's like working at a big corporation. You don't meet everybody. It just doesn't happen. Even then, the rule in New York, I looked it up, is this. If, let's say, I was a judge and you were the attorney, and we both worked at the same firm, and we knew each other, I would have to recuse myself from judging any case you were the lead attorney on, or you were the prosecutor or defendant or whatever. I would have to recuse myself if we worked together within the last 2 years. Or if it was a case that I had worked on, or if it was a client that you had that I had represented in the past. Then it would be a conflict of interest, and I would recuse myself. She's saying 30 years ago, you guys worked at this firm. Since then, you've had almost no contact. Even when you were at the firm, you had no contact, right? But somehow this biases you, and you have to recuse yourself. So it's all bullshit. But what's really funny about it is, instead of filing a motion to appeal, well, and furthermore, her evidence was really stupid. Her evidence is there was an article, and I think it was like the New York Post, which is a total right-wing rag. I mean, and they said they talked to an unnamed source who said that she was friends with the judge. E. Jean Carroll's lawyer was friends with the judge, which turns out not to be true. And they can't name the source. So you have hearsay from an unnamed person. And you're writing a New York Post article, a paper that's notorious for fucking up all the time. They're not even technically news. They're more entertainment. And that's Alina Habba's evidence. And so she writes a letter to the judge, a threatening letter, basically accusing him of being biased. And that's what she's going to base her appeal on. Well, why would you write a letter to the judge? There's no reason to write him a letter. File an appeal and put that in your appeal, and then the appeals court will ask them, the judge, to respond to that. So that's what she did. So she basically threatened the judge. She tried to blackmail the judge after the case to say he was being biased. And I'm going to have Michael Popok read some of the letter here.
Counter. Apologies to check out Counter Tabloids. So let me read from the letter, and then you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Dear Judge Kaplan, written on her letterhead today. We'll put the picture up on it. This letter is submitted on behalf of President Donald J. Trump. Now remember, the judge already told her, stop calling him President Donald J. Trump. He's Donald John Trump. That's it. He doesn't get the president honorific. As a result of a story published in the New York Post, oh my God, I can't even get this out. Defense counsel learned for the first time of allegations that Your Honor, while a partner at the Paul Weiss firm, it's not even the proper name of the law firm, Alina, had a mentor-type relationship with plaintiff's lead counsel Roberta Kaplan. That's not exactly what the New York Post article says. It's uncorroborated, and I can't even believe that it would be true. And if it is true, it's something they knew or should have known 3 years ago and made a motion at that time.
Okay, so just to give you a taste of the letter there. So this is why this is so funny. She's saying the judge didn't disclose this and Roberta Kaplan didn't disclose this. So now it's essentially they're basically failed to disclose. So it's basically they committed, an ethical violation is what she's claiming, right? And that she's going to tag them with an ethical violation. Here's the thing, though. The judge, when he became a federal judge, all this was disclosed everywhere he's worked, right? Roberta Kaplan, as an attorney, has publicly disclosed everywhere she's worked. So this is public information that they both worked at that firm at that about the same time for about 18 months when she first started and he was leaving. So they did disclose this decades ago. Right? This is all disclosed. On top of that fact, this is the same judge that overheard the first E. Jean Carroll trial 3 years ago. So the question is, why didn't you bring this up 3 years ago, Alina? And furthermore, if you're going to bring up this kind of stuff, you need to bring it up before the case and tell the judge you want him to recuse himself. In this case, he wouldn't have to.
So again, she basically does not seem to know the actual process.
And she dropped the ball, yeah.
Of actually going to court.
Yeah, she doesn't know who she's facing or whatnot. She didn't know what their history was. She didn't look this up before. She got this because she read a New York Post article. Well, maybe, and this is what happened, which is really funny, was the Roberta Kaplan, who was the other attorney, so she accused them of bias. Roberta Kaplan wrote a letter to the court. So Habba said this in her letter too. She said, "This is news to us. We are going to include this in our appeal and take appropriate measures. The fact it wasn't disclosed is an ethics violation," all of which is bullshit. This is NBC News. During that relatively brief period, more than 30 years ago, I do remember the Paul Weiss partners with whom I worked, and none of them was Your Honor. More specifically, I have no recollection from that time period of ever interacting with Your Honor on a case, participating with Your Honor in a client or case-related meeting, or attending a court proceeding with Your Honor. In fact, I remember no direct interaction from that time period with Your Honor at all, which makes sense. It was 1,000 lawyers in that firm. Needless to say, at no point have we ever had a mentor-type relationship, as alleged by Ms. Habba, the attorney said. So she goes down to say, well, Ms. Habba ends her letter by characterizing this as a troubling matter. What's actually troubling is both the substance and timing of her false accusations and impropriety. From the very start of the recently concluded trial, Donald Trump and Ms. Habba have pushed a false narrative of judicial bias so that they could characterize any jury verdict against Trump as the product of a corrupt system. Well, that strategy has now moved into its post-verdict phase, which is a really nice way of saying that. It's now time for defendants' false, infectious claims of bias or impropriety to stop. The purpose of the letter was, and then Habba responded, because what ended up happening was Roberta Kaplan said, I'm going to file sanctions against Ms. Habba because she's essentially trying to blackmail the judge by writing him a letter. This is an inappropriate letter to be writing the judge. And she's trying to threaten the judge to try, I don't know, reverse the case or something. I don't know what it is. I'm going to file an ethics violation against you if he doesn't say, oh, no, I fucked up or something. Right?
Yeah, like what's the strategy here?
Yeah, other than to threaten him or try to blackmail him, there's no strategy. So she's actually now...
Yeah, it doesn't seem like one.
So she's actually committed an ethics violation by threatening to tag them with an ethics violation they didn't commit. So she's... The case is over. And now she's fucked it up. And Roberta Kaplan is going to recommend sanctions with the bar, the New York State Bar. And I would be shocked if the judge doesn't do it as well. So she could be looking at getting her license suspended or revoked permanently in New York, her bar license, because of this bullshit. After she lost. She should have just filed the appeal and moved forward. She shouldn't have done any of this shit. And of course, when Roberta Kaplan responded immediately to that, saying she was going to threaten sanctions, this was Alina Habba's response back to the judge right after Roberta Kaplan's letter. The purpose of the letter was simply to inquire as to whether there is any merit to a recently published New York Post story which reported on the alleged existence of such a relationship. Since Ms. Kaplan has now denied that there is ever a mentor-mentee relationship between herself and Your Honor, the issue has seemingly been resolved. So now she's saying, oh, you're going to sanction me. Oh, let's just drop the whole thing. Let's forget it ever happened.
Gosh, people are just so stupid.
Well, here's the problem, too. And Roberta Kaplan sort of alluded to this. She didn't make an accusation, but she alluded to, how did the New York Post get this story? Right? In all likelihood, Alina Habba probably leaked it to them so she could use it as her bullshit evidence. So if they investigate this and they go to the New York Post, the bar does, and they find out, oh yeah, no, we got it from Alina, now she's really cooked. So this woman cannot stop screwing up. No matter what she does, she cannot stop screwing up. God, she's just
so
a gift. Go ahead.
The question is she that stupid or is she that entitled? I sometimes struggle to see the difference between whether somebody's really that dumb or super entitled. Because theoretically, if you can become a lawyer, you must be pretty smart, at least in some respect, because it takes a lot of studying to get there. However, she does all this stupid stuff, so I just can't tell, does she have, no sense about her? Or is she super entitled and just thinks she's above all of it and she can get away with whatever she wants?
No, I think she was a low-level kind of attorney with not a lot of experience. She couldn't get with a firm, so her and her buddy started their own firm. Then she got the opportunity to suck up to Trump, and she did that by basically committing a huge ethics violation and defrauding the woman who was suing Mar-a-Lago for sexual assault. Right? And now that her bar license is up for jeopardy for that case in Florida. Right? Where she tricked that woman. And that whole deal got rescinded. The woman's resuing, and Alina Habba might get sued next. But then she got with Trump, and she's been paid, $3.5 million, but she's already been sanctioned for over $1.5 million. And she's looking at losing her bar license, and she's looking at probably getting sanctioned some more and getting some other fines and stuff attached. So that 3.5 might be gone before she can spend it. But the thing about it too is they were interviewing E. Jean Carroll and Roberta Kaplan, and I didn't pull that clip, but you kind of brought it up. But Roberta Kaplan was saying, it's funny, Alina Habba, when Trump wasn't there, she was all right. She was pretty calm. She was, but when Trump was there, he was spent the whole time talking in her ear, and she was a menace. Probably because he kept pushing her and pushing her and pushing her, because he's trying to do it as a campaign. But I don't think he ever thought that it was going to be 83.3 million. That's a huge figure for a settlement like this. And this leads to our next big story, which is Trump is probably going to be broke. I don't know that he can cover this 83.3 million. And as we said before, he's got to issue a bond. And what creditor is going to give him a bond? Which means he's going to have to pay it in cash. He's going to have to put 83.3 million in cash somewhere in a bond. And Michael Popak's going to cover this, but it's actually worse for Trump than you think. But we're going to go back to Michael Popak covering this on Trump, because this is all kind of interconnected and it's all craziness.
Legal AF. By my calculation, Donald Trump will be out of all of his cash after he pays the judgments and verdicts just this week in the 2 civil cases brought by E. Jean Carroll and the New York Attorney General. What's that, you say? Isn't he a $3 billionaire, Popak? Well, I know the Bloomberg Index likes to talk about it that way. But of that amount, most of it, I would say 90% of it, 85% of it is tied up in real estate and other revenue-producing assets. Cash on hand, according to Donald Trump in his own deposition that he gave about a year ago to the New York Attorney General, he's got just $400 million in cash. That's a lot of money to you and me, but not a lot of money for somebody that's about to face up to $600 million in judgments and verdicts. Let me do the math and expose something else that came out in...
So let me help you out. I'll do the math for you real quick. He does a good job, but it's better from a finance person. So Trump claims he has...
All right, so math it up for us,
Mathing
Duncan.
it up,
math
baby.
It up.
We're gonna do some billionaire budgeting. All right. So he claims he has 400 million, which is probably untrue. It's probably a lot less than that, but let's assume. So it was at 6 or 7 million from the first E. Jean Carroll case that he owes, plus 83 million on this new one. So that's 90 million he's got to come up with quick. Right? On top of that, the New York civil fraud trial, and Goran's supposed to give a ruling sometime this week. And Letitia James, who is the district attorney, asked for 370 million. And Trump would no longer be allowed to do any business in New York. All of his business licenses would be pulled, and his sons would probably lose their business licenses for at least 4 or 5 years. Well, what happened was, we'll get to that here in a second. So that's all looking good. But the thing about it is most attorneys are guessing now that it might be that Goran goes as high as 500 million or more. So that would be 600 million he'd owe. So he's 200 million in the hole. And we also know that he's trying to right now sell a plane and an apartment complex somewhere. And he's been trying to do it quietly under the table because he needs the cash because he's broke. And he's already tried to go to his campaign and ask them to help him pay for it. But they've said, we can't do that. That's illegal. And so many of his campaign funds have been shut down for fraud like that, which is why he's getting sued he's going to get charged by Stormy Daniels and get sued by her and all that. And that's a criminal charge because what he did was to pay her off. He took the money from the campaign to pay her off, which you can't do. I can't take money from my business or from like a campaign fund where people donated money and use it on personal shit. You can't mingle your funds like that because it's fraud. It's tax fraud. So that was going on. So this whole thing now, it looks like he's tanked financially. He might be broke, and New York will probably have to start seizing properties. That's not to also mention the fact that the estimate right now is he's paying anywhere between $5 to $10 million a month in legal fees, and he's got 91 felony indictments of the 4 indictments, and he hasn't even been to criminal court yet. It looks like they pushed back the March one for the January 6th one for the federal case, the DC case, but that looks like that's going to go through in April. So his legal fees are going to go up then. Then he's got the Stormy Daniel one, which could kind of go whenever. They're just waiting for a time frame to figure this out. And then he's going to have to go to court in Georgia for the RICO case. I mean, and then on top of that, he's also right now in the process of being sued by several senators and congressmen for January 6th because he put their lives in danger. Several cops that were injured during January 6th, including the family of the one cop, a couple cops that died in the aftermath of that. And I mean, and then there's like a dozen other people suing him. I mean, so plus he's paying almost $10 million a month in legal fees. That's $120 million a year just to cover his legal fees. Plus, Rudy Giuliani is fucking broke, and Rudy Giuliani is trying to sue him now for all his back legal fees that Trump never paid him.
Oh,
it's like you just like
snap.
How much more manure can we throw onto this pile, man?
Well, tune in next week, kids.
Well, Trump, if you want my legal advice, quit breaking the law, asshole. That's my legal advice. Oh, man.
It feels pretty safe to give that advice.
Oh, I got to tell you, it's like the guy picks the wrong answer every time. If you asked him what his favorite color was, he'd be like, Hitler. That's not what I asked, but okay. So here's what happened. So,
like, that's not even the question.
Oh, man. So the New York fraud case, which is also going to be a lot of fun when we get the verdict on that. So this Friday, the independent investigator, right, did the financial report. And so she's a judge, and Trump and his lawyers agreed to it. The judge agreed to it, and the prosecutor agreed that this woman would monitor his business and his financials to make sure he was in compliance. She gave him an F on her report card, basically saying that, no, there's still inconsistencies. Furthermore, they changed what they were doing when she got there, which is really suspicious. And we're going to watch some more Michael Popak where he talks about this, because this is just, I know we're stealing from the Midas Touch so much today, but they covered this really well.
After dark this coming week, the hits just keep on coming for Donald Trump on the heels of an $83.5 million jury verdict. We're waiting on a $500 million plus judgment against him by Judge Engoron in the New York State Supreme Court for the New York Attorney General's civil fraud case against Donald Trump and all his little Trumper executives with his last name. We'll break down what we think is going to happen and what were the most recent bad facts and bad acts by Donald Trump that will be used by the judge against him in the resulting order. We break it all down one place on Midas Touch, on Legal AF, and here's a clip.
We expect next week that Justice Arthur Engoron is going to issue his order. The New York State Court Judge, Justice Arthur Engoron, will issue his order.
So this is back to the point I was making before, where they're saying from all the attorneys they've talked to, it looks like they're looking at $500 million, $500 million. So, I mean, this is just really, really bad for Trump. Let me skip ahead. Sorry, folks. I thought I had this prep, but here we go.
We've got good news that we can report right on target, right about what Ben said to start the podcast. Judge Engoron is going to be issuing his order on Wednesday, the court has announced, of this week. Just as we said, waiting for the results of the jury, the federal jury, the E. Jean Carroll case, and waiting for this report that we're going over in detail by former Judge Barbara Jones. Judge Engoron is ready to I'm sure, as I said earlier in my analysis weeks ago, that he had most of that order written. at the time of the closing arguments a couple of weeks ago that went terribly for Chris Kice, the lawyer for Donald Trump, and was just waiting to see if there was anything that he had missed in 11 weeks of trial, analyzed. Would be a 15, 20, 25, whatever page single space.
So yeah, so he's pretty much written it. He was just waiting for the report. We'll skip ahead here. Lawrence O'Donnell's going to cover and basically just sort of reiterate what we've been talking about. But this was on Lawrence O'Donnell the other day. And I'm pissed that he beat us to it because I was writing this and then I saw him do it the next day.
Well, E. Jean Carroll has sent Donald Trump on his way to bankruptcy with the $90 million that he now owes E. Jean Carroll as of tonight. That's $83.3 million in a jury return for E. Jean Carroll on Friday, added to the $5.6 million that a jury returned for E. Jean Carroll in the same courtroom last year, and with interest running on both of those judgments. Interest. Remember the interest that everyone else has forgotten about. Donald Trump is already around $90 million in debt to E. Jean Carroll. And that debt increases every single day that it is not paid because of the interest added by law to that amount every day that it remains unpaid. And that could be the smallest debt that Donald Trump owes after a New York judge enters a judgment in a civil fraud case against Donald Trump, in which the New York State Attorney General is sinking $370 million. And that's not all. Don't stop there. There are much bigger possible judgments coming. Washington, D.C. juries could make that New York number look small if they return verdicts against Donald Trump in the civil cases brought against him by 11 members of the House of Representatives. That's 11 plaintiffs who are suing Donald Trump for, in effect, threatening their lives on January 6th by sending his mob to the Capitol. There are also 3 police officers who are suing Donald Trump for the threats and injuries that they suffered on January 6th. Each one of those plaintiffs' cases, each one of them could be getting hundreds of millions of dollars in the same Washington, D.C. courthouse where a civil jury returned a verdict of $148 million against Rudolph Giuliani for the defamation of 2 Georgia election workers, Ruby Freeman and her daughter, Shay Moss. Donald Trump could be facing court orders to pay $1 billion or more in the next few years.
$1 billion. And legal fees and fines and penalties.
Wow.
And he doesn't have it. He might have it if you sell his properties, but then he can't do any more business. And even then, when you factor this in, they figure roughly from all of his properties, his income per year is about maybe $60 million. But that's not going to nearly cover any of this. And if he's going to start selling properties, his income is going to go down because he's no longer going to be getting income from those properties. And he's not going to get equity because it's all going to go back to the court or back to the people that he owes.
Doug and I literally don't know this because it hasn't come up in my world, I guess, fortunately.
Yeah.
Can you bankrupt something like that? Like these
legal fines?
Court fine. Yeah.
No, he's going to owe it.
So they're like student loan. You're gonna be stuck with them. They're like student loans, taxes. You can't get rid of those.
No, like the worst case scenario, I guess, for the victims would be, they just have. I mean, let's say he's totally broke. They just start garnishing a portion of his money going forward. But if he owns businesses, they can liquidate those. They can seize those. So the only thing that they could garnish is if he had income from labor. Somebody was paying him a paycheck, which isn't going to happen. He's never done that. He's never gotten a paycheck before. He always gets paid from shit he owns.
Right.
So they're going to start seizing all that. So he might be flat on his ass here in a year or two. And in all likelihood, he'll probably be in prison by then anyway. So this is really bad. I mean, this is what the end looks like. Looks like he could die broken in prison. That's a very likely possibility at this point. And the big thing about the E.G. and Carroll case, which isn't getting overlooked, but I think is really overlooked by a lot of the right-wing pundits and stuff, is that $83.3 million, that big of a fine, the damages that he had to pay. Basically, that's a green light to all the other courts. Because now if you don't hammer him when he's guilty, you look like a chicken shit. Because that jury wasn't afraid to do it. And that was 9 random people.
Right.
Right. And the judge was not afraid to back them up. So now if you're the court that doesn't hammer him and he's guilty, if after you find him guilty, then you look really bad. You look like you're a shill, like you're in the pocket of, right? So, I mean, it basically, that's why it's such a big deal, is this opened the floodgate to go after him for all of his criminal activities, all of his unlawful fraud, all the shit he's been doing. And and even the report that the judge did for Engoron, she found that one, they changed their financial practices when she started monitoring them, which means they knew what they were doing was wrong. And once they had a monitor there, right, a proctor showed up, right, the teacher's now standing behind you, making sure you're not cheating, then they changed what they were doing. But then what they were still doing stuff that was not normal, as she puts it, or unusual, or there were lots of discrepancies, which is a nice way of saying they were still committing fraud. They just sort of changed how they did it to try and sneak it past me. And then she found that he took a loan that he never repaid that doesn't make any sense, which means he basically just took money out of his business so he wouldn't have to pay tax on it. Plus, he had some parking lot scam where he took $50 million out of that. I mean, it's all this weird shit. So he's going to get hammered. I don't see Judge Engoron coming back for less than $370 million. It's going to be bad. But since we're piling on to the manure pile that is Trump's life, let's talk about somebody who's...
Nice segue. King of segues.
King of segues. Let's move on to Nikki Haley, who's breaking in the donor money now because the business class hates him. The wealthy people hate him. They're scared he's going to tank the economy again. So Nikki Haley now getting all that money. Now all of a sudden she's got her big boy pants on, her big girl pants on, because she's now finally going after Trump. Why? Because that's what her donors are paying her to do. And now she's going after him.
Also, at this point, she kind of doesn't have that much choice.
Well,
you can't really be, I mean, I guess you could, but it would be a super weird thing to do, to be the only person left in the primary against him and do literally nothing but kiss his ass.
Well, but see, here's the thing, though. She could have done what everybody else did, which is drop out and kiss his ass and hope for a position in his cabinet. Right? That's what DeSantis did. That's what Tim Scott did. Tim Scott was saying, "Oh, I just love you, man. You're the greatest." After he was insulting Tim Scott to his face. Tim Scott told him how wonderful he was. I mean, talk about an abused child. But anyway.
But you can't really stay in and do that.
No, but why is she staying in? Because she's getting all this money.
Mm-hmm.
She's gearing up for, look, she's got 2 strategies that she's playing here, and they're both good strategies. One is Trump is either in prison or he's in total mental decline, which it looks like because he's making less and less sense. Right? And a lot of people think he has dementia, and that's what she's pushing really hard. So he's ineligible to run, or he's ineligible to run because of the insurrection. So either any of those 3 things could happen, and then she'll be the only one left standing. Do I think she'll beat Biden? Probably not, but she'll be the only one left. So she'll be the new leader of the Republican Party. And Trump will be gone. So it's an immense amount of power. So it's a good bet for her. the other bet for her is I think she's really sitting there going, we're going to gear up, get this money now, get with these donors, back them, do what they want, but then I'll be in a good position to run in 2028 and actually have a shot because she'll be running against somebody who else has never been president.
Right.
So I think that's what she's doing. But now she's hammering that home now hard because she needs all that sweet donor money.
The Nikki Haley of today.
Sorry, this is David Pakman. He's going to cover it.
She a month ago? Where was she 2-3 months ago? Clearly seizing on the reality that Trump is so wildly triggered by her not getting out of the race and kissing the ring as soon as Trump won New Hampshire. She is seizing on this. She's going full in on the Trump dementia cognitive decline story. She's calling him unhinged, making fun of him for thinking she was responsible for security on January 6th in Washington, D.C. And the Fox News crowd is trying to run interference for her. I'm going to tell you, she's not going to win. A few people wrote to me last week saying, David, it's premature to say she's not going to win. Unless Trump dies, she's not going to be the nominee or, ends up in prison and the party says we can't vote for this guy. She's not going to be the nominee. But I want her to keep trying because it is damaging Trump. It is sending Trump into a tailspin. Here is Nikki Haley on Fox News over the weekend saying he is completely unhinged. Then Bill Hemmer doesn't like it, tries to confront her about it. We'll look at that in the second segment. But where was this Nikki Haley 6 weeks ago?
Ronna McDaniel, the head of the Republican National Committee, on Tuesday night, she said that she thinks you should get out of the race. Have you spoken to her?
I let her know how disappointed I was. Let's look at the last 48 hours, Dana. First of all, you had election night, Trump gets on stage. He throws an absolute temper tantrum talking about revenge, but he says nothing about the American people, nothing about what he's going to do about the wasteful spending that he encouraged and allowed the Republicans and Democrats to do in his term. He said nothing about how he's going to secure the border and what he's going to do different that he didn't do when he was president before. He said nothing about how he's going to prevent war. Then he goes and says that he's going to ban anyone from MAGA that donates to me. Think about that. That's a president who's supposed to serve every person in America, and you're deciding that you're going to have a club and actually ban people from being in and out of your club. And then he goes and encourages the members of the RNC and tries to push them into saying that he's the nominee in the race. They got so much pushback that he had to backtrack from it. He's
sure
totally unhinged. But at the end of the day, our focus is still on
totally unhinged. And she's right. She is absolutely right.
Yep. And she's going to keep hammering him and hammering him and hammering him and sucking votes from him. She's going to stay in as long as she can because that's where the money's coming from. I can't hear you. You're on mute, Lace. Go ahead.
Sorry, there was a kid in the background. I forgot I did that. So I kind of love this, and I feel like maybe this is a little bit dirty of me, but I sort of feel like some Democrats need to slide a little bit of money into the Nikki Haley pool because she's doing us some good freaking work right here, man.
Oh, she's getting,
she's dumping in there. She's making him look terrible and very much, dividing the Republicans because, yeah, he has a nut job and she has to do this because if she's staying in, she literally can't stay in and kiss his ass because then it's like, what's happening, right? So she has to do this move. But knowing that this is the guy they're really going to present, she's really helping out the Democrats. So, go Nikki Haley. I think we got to keep her in this thing for as long as possible.
Well, yeah, but that's the whole strategy, right? So she's getting a ton of money from like the Kochs or with the one Koch brother still alive, from a lot of the wealthy, the corporate class, the moderate Republicans, because they really want Trump to be gone, right? So if she can deliver that, she'll be their girl going forward, right? On top of that fact, like you said, it does nothing but help her out to damage Trump. And then when he, if he loses, we probably will in the general, especially if he gets spanked in the general, she could sit there and go, look, he was the loser. I was the winner. You picked the wrong horse, but I'm still here. So she's put herself in a position where she could now be the new leader of the Republican Party. Not to say she's a good person or she's not dangerous or we shouldn't be concerned about that, but she's certainly better than the alternative right now. And that's what she's hammering home. And she's also hammering home the fact that, yeah, you Trump supporters that love him so much, he's gone. He's mentally gone. He's not here anymore. That's her whole message. And she's got a lot to back that up. You know, you got him at a speech talking about missiles going whoosh, bing, 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 boom, and whoosh. It's like, what the fuck is he talking about? We're all just like, what the hell?
What is happening?
His audience is like, do we clap? Do we leave? What's going on?
Do we laugh? Is this a comedy routine? What's happening?
Is he taking too much Adderall? Too little Adderall? What's going on here? Right? Oh, man. But so Nikki's going to keep going for it. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting election. But yeah, I think Trump is pretty much cooked. I don't know what else he can do. He's hemorrhaging cash now with all the legal shit. He's looking at potential prison sentences if he gets convicted, which he probably will. Almost everybody's predicting he'll get convicted, especially in the January 6th case. Almost certainly on the RICO case in Georgia. I mean, this really looks like the end of the road. I mean, I know we've said that many times before, and people have said that many times before, and Trump always seems to somehow wiggle his way out of it. But I don't know. This time, it's a lot, man. I mean, it's the whole army coming at him. But, man, anyway, that was kind of the news for today, everybody. So we're going to wrap up the news. Crazy stuff. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so we're back. Everything's good to go. So fun stuff. Lacey hasn't seen this yet, but we got to do this. So Taylor Swift, I don't know if you guys know. I had to look all this up. I'm not a huge Swiftie, but she's dating the tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs, and they're in the Super Bowl coming up. This is their 4th Super Bowl in a row. His name is Travis Kelce, I think. And anyway, she came out for Biden. And a couple of years ago, she came out in Tennessee for the Democrat to run, and that person, I think, won by a lot. But she pulled in a lot of the youth vote because she's so popular. And you would think, okay, Taylor Swift, she's a young woman. She's for women's rights. That's her big platform. So she supports the Democrats because the Republicans are very anti-women rights. That's just how it is. And you would think that's all there is to it. She's dating a football athlete. She's, a pop star, makes tons of money. And she just happens to be a liberal Democrat, which is pretty normal for most celebrities. Right? Most artists tend to be
especially young female artists, celebrities. Like if you're that combination, not to hit stereotypes, but if you're that combination, it becomes pretty common. Yeah.
Right. Well, most artists tend to be liberal because most art is fairly liberal. I mean, conservative art is really just decoration, right? It's not really an art form. I'm not going to write a play about how everything's great and should stay how it is. Right? It's a pretty boring story.
You don't frame the birthday wrapping paper.
Right. Yeah.
Hang it on your wall?
Nope, I don't do that. Don't do that at all. But anyway, you would think that's all there is. You would think that's all there is to it. But you were so wrong. The conservatives have a whole new theory about why Taylor Swift is endorsing Joe Biden. It's amazing. This is the culmination of that theory. They've been running this on Fox News, but this is OAN. We're going to watch the Majority Report covering this because I couldn't find this clip on OAN. But, oh my God, we had no idea. It's so much deeper and darker than you think it is. Are you ready, Lacey? Are you ready to go down the rabbit hole?
I am so ready.
Okay.
Is this going to make me a Swiftie? I'm not one. I don't have any thoughts about her either way, really. Am I going to become a Swiftie now?
It might make you want to kill her. You never know. This could go so many ways. So here's Sam Cedar of the Majority Report, and they're going to cover this. The dark forces.
We may wade into this burgeoning scandal that is unfolding, this sort of like rolling coup that we're seeing that involves Taylor Swift And is it Kelsey? Is he?
Yeah, Travis Kelsey. Yeah, no,
Is he
you mean the
tight end?
psyop.
Is he a tight end for the Chiefs?
He's a tight end for the Chiefs. That's right.
Yeah. And it's pretty obvious what's happening here, which is why all of these right wingers have signed on to it. It is it is incredible. Both how bat crap crazy some people are in this country, and B, how completely shameless folks like Vivek Ramaswamy and I don't know, Tim Pool and others are in promoting this theory for money. The combination of both complete shamelessness and assumption of utter stupidity and insanity on behalf of their audiences is fascinating to me. It really is. It's like when you see these people talk about it, well, we'll get into it later, but when you see these people talk about it, what you're seeing is like you're seeing the reflection in a mirror, or you're seeing like a shadow. And the thing that's the initial object that's creating that reflection, or that initial object that is creating that shadow, just may be so disturbing.
I remember we were talking about with Rogan when Matt was like, sometimes it's as if Rogan is just getting stoned and having a panic attack and we're just hearing it. It feels a lot like that. Like these guys are so perturbed by the relationship that they are just literally having a meltdown psychiatrically in regards to it, and how they're basically processing how much they can't stand this celebrity couple.
It's unbelievable. I know why they do this, but I just it's just.
Hey guys, let me skip ahead here to the clip. He's got a lot of monologue there. All right, here we go. Here it is.
The first one, that's the most famous and the most common, is working with famous people or main influencers to share information or a particular message. So I include Taylor Swift in here.
Well, what you just watched there was the incredible moment that a rep from the Pentagon's Psychological Operations Research firm pitched NATO's military PSYOP center on turning Taylor Swift into an asset back in 2019. Now, we've talked about this on the show before, but now we have to talk about it again. Because a new poll conducted by Redfield and Wilton Strategies found that 18% of voters say they're significantly more likely to vote for a candidate endorsed by Taylor Swift. It's reported the 2024 presidential election will see 8 million new voters in the U.S. electorate and a total of 41 million Gen Z voters, many of whom are obviously influenced by celebrities and social media. And seeing as T Swift has a whopping 94.9 million followers on X alone, compared to Trump's inactive account with 87 million, and Biden's POTUS account with a measly 33 million, half of which are probably bots, let's be honest, I'd say, yeah, that's probably reason for concern. Especially when you take into account the fact that George Soros and the Carlyle Group own Taylor Swift and her music.
After I was denied the chance to purchase my music outright, my entire catalog was sold to Scooter Braun's Ithaca Holdings in a deal that I'm told was funded by the Soros family, 23 Capital, and the Carlyle Group.
All right. So are you with it so far? So Biden and the Democrats, 2019, using the Pentagon, decided they were going to recruit Taylor Swift as a psychological operation to manipulate the election. And since 18% of voters vote with whoever she endorses, she could swing the election. And she's working with George Soros, the Jews. That's their code word for the Jews, because George Soros is a Jew who was in the camps in World War II. George Soros bought all of her music and he owns it. And she's pissed about it. So she's technically owned by George Soros and wants to make him happy. It doesn't make sense, except for you have to open your mind. All right, sheeple, open your mind. Okay. And if you think this is a joke, you're already part of the deep state and you're too far gone.
So it's either that or
she's a Democrat.
She's a female artist the crossover is frequently liberal,
Democrat.
most times liberal Democrat.
Yeah.
So, or it's that.
Or
it's this whole conspiracy theory. So yeah, it's one of those.
Well, this is deeper, man. You need to listen. You're not connecting the dots, Lacey. You're not just. You got to take the journey.
I've never been a very good sheeple.
You're a terrible sheeple. You're not connecting the dots. You don't know what's going on, Lacey. It's so much darker. So much darker. We're gonna get more. Allison here is gonna explain.
It perpetuates all the mainstream liberal talking points. She's very pro-LGBT. She supports abortion.
Oh, wow.
She condemned white supremacy during the BLM riots of 2020. She despises Trump. And now look, the mainstream media is massively pushing the pop star to...
What was that? Did you say something?
Like, why on Biden's Green Earth are we putting white supremacy in quotes? Like it's not real or something.
It's not real, Lacey. It's not real. It's made up by the Pentagon and Joe Biden and George Soros and the Jewish elite. They meet in a secret they meet in a secret facility in Colorado once a year called the Meadows. They're also part of the lesbian dentist cartel. You know about them. Put a chip in your tooth while you're sleeping just to bill you more. You don't even know. This is so deep, Lacey.
Oh man.
So deep. This is so deep.
Continue furthering their agenda.
What was that?
Is it woo, here we go.
Here we go.
She suddenly becomes political, and now she's plastered all over magazines, airports, the NFL, and now even the Super Bowl. It's just 24/7 nauseating.
I have to...
So now the Super Bowl's involved, Lace, because she's dating a guy who's going to be playing in the Super Bowl. Do you see how deep this goes? It's so deep, Lace. So deep. We're going to get down to it. We're going to get into it. It's so dark.
We're supposed to pretend we don't see the psyop? Look, we all know what's happening with Taylor Swift is not organic and it's not natural. It's a coordinated marketing campaign by Democrats to leverage celebrities to excite their base into coming out and voting. They know Joe Biden is incapable of doing that.
Oh my God. A politician trying to get their base to vote? Oh, how awful.
So instead, they have to use their Hollywood puppets to propagate a narrative that'll influence the absent-minded masses. I mean, come on. They did it once before. Why not do it again? And this time, go really hard and double down all the way. Isn't it interesting? She just so happens to be dating Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce, better known as Mr. Pfizer. Oh, who's now also...
Okay, so they call him... The reason she calls him Mr. Pfizer is because during the pandemic, Travis Kelce did an advertisement for Pfizer to try to get people to get the vaccine. So he's Mr. Pfizer because he's pro-vax. Oh, no. So it's pro... But remember, the vaccines, they put tracers in them so they can track us. Because, they can't track us with, our cell phones.
We put leashes on ourselves. We literally have the trackers literally attached to ourselves.
Oh my God. So now, okay, wait. Okay, Taylor Swift, the Pentagon, Joe Biden, the Democratic Party, George Soros, the Jews, right? Now, the NFL and Pfizer. Are you seeing it? Are you seeing all the connections here? All of it. Big conspiracy. She's not dating him because he's an athlete and he's got a great body. And she probably likes him. No. It's part of this. This is the Pentagon strategy, Lacey. You don't even know how deep this goes. The Pentagon and the Jewish elite.
Wow.
Oh, sorry.
Let's skip ahead in this. Sorry.
Okay.
Who's now also going to the Super Bowl, which is sponsored by, you guessed it, Pfizer.
What a coincidence.
Oh, see? Pfizer's also doing the Super Bowl. Do you see it now? Do you see the connection? Is your mind open?
I see they've been doing too much of something and I can't even tell you what it might be.
I know. Where did they got the good stuff. I have never been that high in my life.
Ever. And I thought liberals were way more likely to have the good stuff.
Oh, man. We can get more. She brings in that Taylor Swift has sold her soul to the devil and all this shit, too. So Satan's involved now. I mean, everybody's fucking involved. But what it really comes down to is Taylor Swift is, she's a pop star. She's very famous. And she wanted to voice politically things that are bothering her. And so she endorsed certain candidates. But it can't be because that's what she endorses. It has to be a conspiracy theory.
Because Taylor Swift couldn't possibly just think for herself and have her own political leaning and then just happen to also have a pretty big following. She couldn't possibly just on her own have opinions and say them. It could only be because she's owned by and put up to something. I mean, you know what? This is a conspiracy theory definitely for the conservatives, if you think about it, because they can't even just credit her with thinking for herself.
Well, you want to know what's really funny about this is I don't pay attention to a lot of pop music. I listen to a lot of like rock and indie shit, but I actually, when they saw the picture, I'm like, oh yeah, that's Taylor Swift. I was thinking of Miley Cyrus the whole time. They're both blonde pop stars. I mean, at my age, they're interchangeable. I mean, they're basically just Madonna clones at this point to me. I mean,
Madonna's not even a Madonna clone anymore.
Madonna, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, Taylor Swift, Miley Cyrus. It's all the same thing recycled in my mind. Oh man! But anyway, I had to cover that because that's just incredible. But the right wing, they always go after women. They love going after women, but especially white women that don't agree with them. That pisses them off, man. They go fucking nuts when a white woman doesn't agree with them. I don't know why. Maybe it's some sexist, racist thing, but Jesus.
I do think it falls somewhere loosely into the sexist, racist. This is what your role is supposed to be in society, sort of bullshit. Yeah.
It's crazy stuff. Well, I wanted to cover one last thing real quick, and then later on, everybody, we have a Patreon page. We'll be putting videos up starting next week. We're going to cover more deep financial stuff on the Patreon page. So definitely check that out. And, like and subscribe, come to our show, and check out Lacey and her stuff. But anyway, we're going to do this real quick. So, because Taylor Swift is kind of an interesting thing because she has a lot of Gen Z is, probably her one of her bigger audiences. That and apparently white conservative men who are now pissed off. I'm sure it's a lot of older white guys are her real fans, the real fans. Right?
Oh my goodness.
Watching her alone with a box of Kleenex and a bottle of lotion. Those guys. The Fox News guys. Anyway.
But then nobody needed to think about that. All right.
Anyway, the whole manipulation of the Gen Z thing is kind of stupid. So this is the Pink News. This is the LGBTQ news, but they're actually citing who did they cite here? I forget. I think they cited, I can't remember. We'll get to it in a second, but they looked at this. So more Gen Z Americans identify as LGBTQ than as Republican. So Gen Z is what, like 12 to 28, right? So more of them. So this is Axios, sorry, was where they cited this from. 12 and 27. So yeah, 12 and 13 and 28, about that. They did 6,000 young people surveyed in 50 states. 21% of Gen Z Americans said they were Republicans. So 1 in 5. 32% of baby boomers say they're Republicans, right? Those are the older people in their 60s, 70s. Gen Z adults were also far less likely to identify as white Christians. 27%. That's low. It's usually like 54% for baby boomers. Yeah, it's been high for a while. Not affiliated to any religion, 33%. Wow. Yeah, so they're Gen Z is the queerest generation the U.S. has seen, with more than a quarter of young adults identifying as LGBTQ, compared with just 4% of baby boomers. And you know what's interesting about that too is I looked into that a little deeper. It's like 60 something percent, almost 60, maybe it's a little higher than 60% of people that identify as LGBTQ identify as the B, bisexual.
Yeah.
You know, they'll date, you know, they date one more than the other probably, but they can switch back and forth.
Right.
Which I think is, you know, probably not that unusual when you think about it.
That is the way that I choose to identify as well. And I gotta tell you, back in my day, I just felt like we weren't really invited to the party too much. Nobody wanted us in their club, and now, you know, we are a very large percentage of all the clubs.
Yeah, but if you think like historically, you know, about big like the samurai culture in Japan or Rome or whatnot, that was more acceptable. I mean, you know, to be bisexual. So, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's that unusual to me. But yeah, but a huge portion of them are liberal or Democratic. You know, so there's a big portion of them that they typically vote Democrat when they vote. And the big thing that propelled Biden was out of the 40 million of them that can vote, a ton of them came out in 2020, and a ton of them came out in 2022. Now, there have been some recent polls that make it look like a lot less of them are going to vote for Biden and more of them are going to vote for Trump. But there's some unusual things about these polls, and I want to pull this up. This is Tim Pool. We've made fun of him before, and he says he's sort of independent or more left, but he's a right wing nut job. That's who he simps for. But his target audience is he's trying to get young voters, young people, and try to move them over to the right wing. That's kind of his target, right? That's what he does. He'll say he doesn't, but that's what he does. But here he is talking about this, and I wanted to cover this a little bit because I think it's hilarious.
In this story from the Post Millennial, Teen Vogue says Biden and Democrats are losing Gen Z support, claims they may not vote at all. I'm sure all the Republicans would absolutely accept either they don't vote or they vote for Trump. Now we have this from Vox.com. What Democrats panic over young voters misses. Okay, sure, whatever. The point is, even Vox is acknowledging Democrats are starting.
Okay. Once again, we're going to have to do our usual, why won't they read the article before they lecture us on it? So, Tim Pool, champion of the young viewer, the young voter, always wears the beanie. And I was curious, why does he always wear the beanie? Because it looks stupid. Is that just me? Well, it's not that bad because this is what Tim Pool looks like without the beanie.
Okay.
This is the guy that speaks to the youth. So here's the Teen Vogue article. Gen Z voters say they're opting out of the election. And then part of it's because they're pissed about Biden's response to Israel and Gaza. So a lot of them said, I'm not going to vote for Biden unless he does something about that. And he's actually now starting to do something about that, especially since the International Court basically told the Israelis, you got to stop the genocide shit, or there's going to be sanctions and penalties. Right. And now Biden's threatening to say, look, if you guys don't come to some sort of ceasefire or agreement, I'm going to cut the weapons and money that we send to Israel by almost half, which would really cripple the Israeli government. So he's doing something now. But they had this whole thing about does Trump lead or not lead? And here was the thing that came out about that. So Vox talks about it in their article here. And I like how he Vox recognizes it, but he doesn't read the article. So right now, a recent warning sign came from, so this is the Vox article, sorry everybody, that he was referencing. A recent warning came from USA Today, Suffolk University poll of registered voters for the first of the month, a fraying coalition, Black Hispanic young voters abandon Biden as election year begins. Read the headline of the accompanying piece. Under the hood, the numbers look dire. Among voters under 35, a generation largely at odds with the GOP on issues such as abortion and access and climate change, Trump now leads 37 to 33%, USA Today notes. The poll of 1,000 registered voters was conducted in the last week of the year. So it's only 1,000 people. So it's kind of an interesting short poll. But as you go down through the article, they talk about these are the reasons why the poll might be the way it is. So if the poll is right here, Biden has a major problem that can turn catastrophic. Young people are pissed at him from his approach to Israel and climate change, down on the state of the economy and the country more generally, are concerned about his age. And no amount of nuance or cope can wish the fact that young voters are dropping Biden for Trump and other third-party candidates. That's what Tim Pool's pushing. The second one, which is probably a little bit more likely, is the polls are noisy. So Biden faces a problem, but not one that should send Democrats into a tailspin. The campaigns haven't really swung into action. Biden's campaign hasn't really done much yet. Polls this far out are noisy, and third-party support is always overestimated. Or the polls are missing something, which could also be true. This is a complex case for scrutiny that holds the polls are capturing some dissatisfaction with Biden, but they are overstating Trump's edge because of how polls are conducted now. It's harder for polls and pollsters to reach young people specifically and accurately capture their sentiments. And the respondents feeding these polls are even less likely to be representative of the rest of the cohort than other generations, which is probably the more likely scenario, which is young voters who are going to vote for Biden aren't really voting for Biden. They're voting against Trump. So if you call them and try to get them to take a poll or a survey, they're less likely to do it. But Trump supporters, who are younger people, are going to take that survey. So you're probably getting an unfair bias, right? You're getting a tainted sample out of those 1,000 people because most of them are probably people that are Trump supporters that really want to answer that survey. As opposed to most of the Biden voters who are kind of like, yeah, I mean, it's between him and Trump. I guess I got to hold my nose and vote for Biden. Right?
It's true.
I mean, Biden's okay, but I mean, that's kind of my attitude about it is, he's not my first choice, but Abraham Lincoln isn't running this year. So, I mean, I got to go with what's left. But we'll watch a little bit of this Tim Pool thing and then we'll wrap up. But yeah, this just seems so stupid to me because you notice how he skips right over the content and just says there's a problem. It just goes right to his conclusion without any...
to freak out because more and more polls are coming out that somehow a 77-year-old Republican white man has garnered majority support among the youth vote. It has been throughout my life. The youth vote is always a bunch of naive young Democrats.
That's how we got Obama.
Yeah, Obama's like, vote for me. I'm going to not blow kids up. And then I was like, okay, sounds good to me. And then as soon as he got in, he was like, huh, it's like, blow them up. Too many of them.
I can believe it. It's super believable because I just see a lot of the young kids, their whole culture is like based. Like I see a lot of them, just the most average kid, they like being base, and being base is kind of like being what conservatives would consider like, not unhinged, but they really don't give a F about what they say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's the most off the wall things that's considered base liberals would not approve of. And majority of the youth.
So I love how this works. This is why I love these shows. So these guys say they're not Trump supporters or Republicans, but everything they're saying is supporting Trump. And what's his thing? Oh, young people are stupid and they're idiots and blah, blah, blah. Except for now that the polls look right, the way we like the polls, oh, they're really based, man. They know what they're talking about, They're a lot more sophisticated. But watch, as this moves towards the election and they start to see more of what Trump looks like and Biden starts attacking him more and Nikki Haley continues to attack him and he has his court shit and his legal problems. I mean, the guy was just found guilty of rape, right? Do you really think you could sell that to Gen Z? Do you think a bunch of 20-year-old girls are going to sit there and go, yeah, I'm going to vote for the 77-year-old rapist? I mean...
That's not the most feminine of stances.
No.
The feminist The feminist type is, generally speaking, swayed away from that sort of thing.
Well, and as we look, more of them identify as gay than Republican. More of them identify as liberal or Democrat or leftist than they do conservative. So if you're looking at our first article versus these articles that Tim has cherry-picked, these articles don't make any sense. That's why Vox is being very careful there, because it doesn't make sense that you'd be getting that result when you look at the demographics. The demographics would look like Biden's going to win. And in fact, Biden won the vast majority of the Gen Z vote in 2020 and 2022. So if there's some dramatic change has happened in the last 2 years, the question is, what is it? And they're never going to get into it. It's just they're based, and this is how it is, and they're finally starting to see the light kind of thing. It's back to the conspiracy shit. They've been brainwashed by the psyops, the Taylor Swifts. But these guys are also guys that were bitching about Taylor Swift. And they were pushing that whole Taylor Swift is a pawn of the deep state shit. But then they tune totally flips when they get an article that tells them something they want to hear. As opposed to looking at it consistently. Let's look at both sides and let's analyze it and break it down. What does it really look like?
Nah, they don't want to have to read it.
Right. They just want the headline. Yeah, because if you read the Vox article, the Vox article says, yeah, I mean, it could be lots of things, but it's way too early to tell. And if there is some big shift, the question is, what is it? And nobody really knows. If there was, there might not even be a big shift. It might be that polls are just off. Because, most of us that are under the age of, 45, we get a call on our phone and we don't recognize the number. It's like, fuck it, leave a voicemail. I'm not answering that. I don't know you. So.
Yeah, sure.
So anyway, I don't know if you had any thoughts about that, but I would be willing to bet dollars to pesos Biden wins the youth vote again by a lot.
I would as well. Yeah. I'm with you.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that was pretty much our show for today. Check us out on Patreon. We're going to do some videos starting next week. Email us if you guys have any questions or concerns. Where can everybody catch you, Lace?
All right. If you're looking for me, you can find me at mysensewithsense.com. Information about courses, workshops, and articles. If you have questions about those, or if you find some fun clips for us, or maybe the newest politician we need to be looking at. I don't know. Anyone interesting, guys? Email us and send them to us. Duncan, where should that be?
You can send it to us at gossipfinancead@outlook.com. It's down below, along with links to Lacey's pages. Also, link to our Patreon. Nothing really there yet, so I wouldn't jump on it, but there will be stuff coming up soon, so check us out. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Like and subscribe, and, join us next week. Thanks, everybody.